Somebody once told me the
2003's Hulk is kind of fucking weird. And while I'm not the biggest Hulk fan, I'm pretty sure the comics don't mention Bruce Banner's dad getting injected with jellyfish juice, altering his DNA, and then passing that to Bruce so then when he gets hit with radiation, it's the jellyfish juice that actually turns him into the Hulk. See, while this movie is insane from beginning to end, the first half is really, really boring. Well, except for this part.
David, I have wonderful news. I'm gonna have a baby.
And what you may notice, just from the few clips I'm showing you now, is that this movie has some amazing editing. I wish I could show it all, but I'll keep in as many clips as I can. The editing is pretty much the only thing that can get me through this first half of the movie. It's so poorly paced and confusing, so to avoid you having to go through it, I'm just going to give you a rundown of what happens so we can get to the good shit. Bruce Banner's dad, whose name I refuse to learn, is doing cell regeneration experiments for the military. He shoots up jellyfish juice, and then he has a son who's the little green goblin boy who inherits his jellyfish traits. Bruce's dad gets shut down, he initiates the base's self-destruct, he goes to assault Bruce's mom, and then Bruce is awake. But he's a teenager, going off to college, but never mind, it's 15 years later and he's a scientist. Bruce blows up a frog, his dad is a janitor, and Albert Wesker wants Bruce's ex-girlfriend Betty to work for him to make bioweapons or something, and Betty's dad, General Ross, who shut down Bruce's dad, is suspicious of Bruce. Hey look, Stan Lee and Lou Ferrigno, who's wearing a shirt that is way too fucking tight. So now, after setting up 3 villains and giving all this time to backstory, we can finally get to the moment we've all been waiting for. Oh my god! Why is the aspect ratio all fucked? Is this a mistake? What is happening? When Bruce wakes up in the hospital, his dad shows up to spit some of the most insane dialogue in this movie.
Your name is not Krensler. It's Banner.
This character has so many moments of just rambling about shit that nobody knows what he's talking about. The only other character that would have any context for who he even is General Ross, and they never even meet face to face on screen.
A terrible accident. You're wondering why you're still alive. You're thinking there's something inside. Something different. Inexplicable.
So Bruce's dad says that he's his dad because he was adopted. I didn't mention it because it's really not important. He also says,
They put me away for 30 years. 30 years. Away from you. Away from our work. But they couldn't keep me forever after all I'm saying. They had to admit it.
okay, what? So without an insanity plea, he was only jailed for 30 years for military sabotage, unauthorized genetic experiments, and at least 1 direct murder. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure this man is a war criminal. But I guess he got out on good behavior. He was a good little boy in prison, so now he can go back to doing literally exactly what he was doing before. Wait, where did he get all this equipment? There's a scene with Betty and her dad having lunch where he talks about how much he fucking hates Bruce because his dad was an evil scientist when he was 4, but that's fucking boring. Bruce Banner's getting pissed at all these Sony Vegas effects, so it's time to see the fucking Hulk, baby! Bruce wakes up in his house after destroying the lab he works at, and Betty comes to tell him that something fucked up their lab.
What happened to you last night?
I had the most vivid dream. It was like being born, coming up for air, light hitting my face and screaming. My heartbeat. Like boom, boom.
Were you at the lab?
Boom. Boom. Boom.
But soon after, a very suspicious General Ross comes in to say, "Hey fucker, you left this in your lab. You don't happen to be a giant green man, do you?" Both of the dads in this movie are fucking hilarious. While Bruce's dad is just this paranoid, unbathed weirdo that just goes around spitting dialogue that nobody has any context for, this man has no evidence that Bruce is a bad person, much less a green monster. All he knows is that his dad was crazy and did science experiments on himself, and that Bruce happens to be involved in the same field. But when a disaster happens at the lab, he immediately assumes Bruce had something to do with it because he found his wallet? See, it would make a lot more sense if there were security cameras and someone saw Bruce turning into a big green man and told like the military or whatever. Oh, but if the lab had security cameras, then Bruce's dad would get caught stealing all that equipment he used to make the Hulk rats. And then we'd only have 2 villains in this movie instead of 3.
Tell me what happened when you were a baby, you son of a bitch!
Betty then decides to go to Bruce's dad's house, and then he goes on another weird, aimless tangent to someone who really knows nothing about him at all.
The world will not tolerate his existence, will they? But you try, don't you? Yeah. And a very beautiful woman like you, your attentions can't be completely unwanted, can they?
After he directly threatens her, she leaves, and he sends some Hulk doggies to go kill her for some reason. He calls Bruce and tells him about this, and he gets big mad. Wesker comes in because he thought that Bruce was meeting with Ross because he was making some military deal behind his back.
Talbot. Yeah? You're making me angry. Oh, am I?
So obviously he goes Hulko mode and just casually murders people as he escapes to go help Betty. And yeah, this scene is too dark to see anything. I know. The only thing I can clearly make out is that when these Hulk dogs die, they puff into these big green clouds, implying that Hulk too will eventually puff into green smoke. Also, you get to see Bruce Banner's ass, but I don't know why in the majority of the scenes the Hulk is in, it's always in the dark. He's in broad daylight later in the movie, and I think for the time he actually looks pretty good. It's weird, it's almost like this massive budget, it went somewhere else. Oh my god! Jesus, they didn't want to waste a single fucking shot of these helicopters. So the military captures Bruce when he passes out after murdering the dogs, and now he's essentially prisoned. But Betty manages to get him out off screen so they can explore the town where he grew up, but they're escorted by military dudes with guns, but those don't work. I guess they'll find out later. Betty and Bruce go to Bruce's childhood home, and this is one of the more interesting aspects to this movie. They talk about Bruce's childhood trauma, that he essentially witnessed his mom be murdered by his dad, and how that emotional damage could be what fuels the Hulk. Now that's stupid, like really stupid, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to make a Hulk movie about overcoming trauma. I think it's actually a really cool idea, just not for a movie with Hulk dogs and this shit. After this, Bruce's dad is trying to replicate what happened to Bruce so he can become a Hulk too. He shoots himself with gamma radiation, but he cuts his hand, which shows his blood has turned into jello. He realizes that he has the power to absorb the properties of whatever he touches, and immediately understands this concept and uses it to murder. Wait, hey, wouldn't his elbow start turning to metal right there? Oh, never mind. Betty gets Bruce back into his prison, again, off screen, and Wesker takes over the base because I guess he could do that. And this is probably the second dumbest scene in the movie. In an effort to turn Bruce into the Hulk and extract some DNA to sell to the military, he puts him in a glass tube of water and activates his bad memory machine. So since he's the only one who's seen Bruce turn into the Hulk, I'm assuming he's the only one that knows how much bigger he gets. So I guess this man just doesn't know how water displacement works. Hulk then obviously breaks free and goes fucking ham on the base.
Okay, he's going ham.
try to corner him in a hallway and they spray him with some goo that looks like it's from a Spy Kids movie. And of course he breaks out of it. And when the military dude tries to kill him with a grenade, it just bounces off of him without him even noticing. And then he fucking dies by getting outlined in Photoshop. Eventually he does make it outside where they just keep shooting him. I mean, for like 10 minutes. They just shoot and shoot and shoot, and of course it does fucking nothing. The military eventually chases him all the way to San Francisco, which doesn't make sense considering that they were just in a dune sea. Then the movie has Hulk save a bunch of people by jumping on a jet that was headed for the Golden Gate Bridge. Because he's actually a superhero, guys, I swear it! Even though right after he's literally trying to murder the pilot. So eventually they get Betty to calm Bruce down to baby form, and this is where the movie goes absolutely fucking bananas. The army captures Bruce and they tie him to a chair in the middle of an electrical field that will vaporize him if he makes one wrong move. And because the movie almost forgot about him, they bring Bruce's dad in to talk to him. The scene is insane. It's the culmination of everything this character has been doing this entire movie in a single gorgeous segment. And the only way to present it to you, I think, is to just show it to you in all of its glory.
Son, I need your strength. I gave you life. Now you must give it back to me. Only a million times more radiant, more powerful. Stop! Stop! What? Stop! What? Think of all those men out there in their uniforms, barking and swallowing orders, inflicting their petty rule over the entire globe. Think of all the harm they've done to you, to me, to humanity. And know this, that we can make them and their flags and their anthems and their governments disappear in a flash. You and me, I'd rather die. Oh, that's your answer. And indeed you shall die and be reborn, a hero of the kind that walked the earth long before the pale religions of civilization infected humanity's soul. Go! Stop your bawling, you weak little speck of human trash. I'll go. You just watch me go. Hit it.
Bruce's dad has got to be my favorite character in the movie after seeing it so many times. He just shows up with no real goal in mind other than to just get superpowers, I guess. You'd think that because Ross shut him down in the beginning that he'd have some final monologue with someone who actually has any idea what the fuck he's saying, but no, he just becomes electricity and fights his son. They fight for another 5 minutes, and Bruce's dad eventually starts absorbing Bruce's energy, but because Hulk has so much emotional pain and trauma, he just turns his dad into a big bubble, and the army fucking shoots it with a missile, causing it to explode into green smoke. The movie ends on kind of a cool note with Bruce working in either South or Central America as a doctor. And I actually like this concept a lot and would have preferred if the whole movie was actually about this. All in all, this movie is fucking crazy, but it takes so long to get there, it's almost not worth watching. I had to watch this movie 4 or 5 times before I really started to love the last half, but the editing alone is almost something to watch it for. I'm really mixed on how to approach a summary of how I feel about the movie, but at the end of the day, I think it's just really funny. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. I would also really appreciate if you could share this video with a friend, or click like, or subscribe, or whatever, it really helps me out, and I promise I'll have another video out sometime soon. Thanks again! Goodbye!